Little bright in here, y'all. There's got to be a better way. It don't look that bad. It really doesn't. It looked kind of worse than I thought. All right. Boy, when you want a song to end, it just doesn't end. Am I right? Here we go. All right, fam. What's up? Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like us if you like us and all the other places where we're at. The best place, of course, to follow us is right here, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. Throw a like on the video. And here we go. All right. Contrary to popular opinion, I'm not a huge fan of doing these like I told you so videos, which I of course have to do here because there had been for a long time a group of Republican supporters, whatever you want to call them. You know, they love the People's Pundit when they give them polls that make, you know, that are better than the crappy media and university polls for them. But we did that because we simply tell the truth. And sometimes in politics, you have to think of it like a pendulum, all right? That's the way American politics works. It's like a pendulum that constantly swings back and forth. Sometimes the pendulum slows down, though. If you take a period like FDR, he had a almost 30-year coalition where, of course, there were breakthroughs for Republicans, including during the midterms, during the after the passage of New Deal reforms. The New Deal was much larger than we know it today to be. However, Republicans did get in office and managed to roll back quite a lot of those New Deal reforms. So where am I going with this? Republicans after 24 had a chance to make this kind of, you know, New Deal coalition, but they screwed it up. And that's the truth. They are in the process of screwing it up badly. They refuse to acknowledge the reality of their political coalition, what won Trump, not them, because they did not perform that well. That's the truth. In 24, Republicans did not perform that well, especially not when you have a candidate at the top of the ticket who performs as well as Donald Trump did. Donald Trump, I think it's fair to say, considering, you know, the lefty polls that were put into averages and all the lefty models, you know, from losers like these guys, right? If you just judge Donald Trump against these guys, and hold up, I can very clearly see a coffee stain on my shirt, which means I spilled it. Swapping shirts. Sorry, the graph has to stay up. But if you are looking at just like the estimates that we were all told by pollsters that these guys say are credible and all of their little fake models and everything like that, then you have to say Donald Trump overperformed. But Republicans, compared to not only expectations, but Donald Trump's performance, absolutely underperformed in 2024. And the reasons for that, we have been over and over and over and over and over and over. We've done shows about how Democrats managed to buck the trend of history in 2022. And despite, polling very poorly and Republicans actually doing about as good as they were estimated to do on our generic ballot and others, Democrats managed to overperform. And we've been over the reasons for that. One, of course, is Republicans, the realignment, and the nature of the Republican coalition being now a low turnout coalition, and Democrats having the doing better with older voters, which was Monday's show, and also doing better with white voters who are becoming more educated. And then a big part of this was that they kicked the Republicans' asses with redistricting. They gerrymandered the country in a way that gave them a significant structural advantage. Now, it's true that Democrats had a slight structural disadvantage before that, and they more than reversed that disadvantage that they had and turned it into a much more a steeper advantage. And we know Texas now, that official map is out. We know how that's going to go. And judging by how they drew that map, it's another very clear indication that Republicans have not heeded the warnings from myself and others who are very clearly smarter than the clapping seal morons who are leading them down the primrose path to disaster. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's part of the reason why they underperformed Donald Trump in 2024 in that particular stint. They did not do as well as Donald Trump with very important constituencies. In the state of Texas, Donald Trump won more than 30% of the African-American male vote. That is an incredible number. Republicans did not. Statewide, you put it all together in congressional districts, they did not. Yet they drew that map basing the performance off of Trump's performance, not theirs. Do you understand the difference? It's a big one. And I know you guys are smart for the most, the vast majority of my audience. You get what I'm talking about. Also, of course, with Texas, another big deal is the Hispanic vote, which even Trump is now struggling with. But they're judging that map and those projections off of Donald Trump's performance in the Rio Grande and all over outside of El Paso, Starr County, Hidalgo County, all of these areas where we have highlighted and showcased for you to basically exemplify what is going on in the ground with Donald Trump's increased performance among groups that just is historic. It was historic. And here we are again. I mean, that map is another indication, but we've also had a series of special elections. And now we're going to have 2 off-cycle governor elections where very clearly they are not heeding the warning signs. And why is this even happening is the point. I mean, I really can't put it any more simpler, than this. The number one job of the Republican Party was to convince MAGA that the Republican Party is now Trump's party and believes what Trump believes, supports the policies that Trump supports, wants to change fundamentally the direction of the country the way that Donald Trump envisions this change. Mark Mitchell, head pollster at Rasmussen Reports, tweeted yesterday. It was a beautiful tweet. It was exactly right. Conservatism is not popular in this country right now. Traditional conservatism is not. Donald Trump, and he didn't write this, but I'm getting to the point of his tweet. Donald Trump won overwhelmingly, overperforming in an electorate that was the most moderate presidential electorate than I have ever polled in my entire career. The most moderate electorate that we have seen in my lifetime. 38% conservative, 40% conservative, 42% conservative is no longer a thing. We're now looking at 30 to 34% conservative, and yet Donald Trump won because he did better with non-voters, non-high propensity voters, low propensity voters, who when asked call themselves moderate. Democrats have been slapping with these voters for a long time, but what did Donald Trump do? He didn't just change the margin and change minds, he changed the electorate, which then changed and had an impact on the margin. And I don't think people understand that those are 2 different things. Right? So now we have a series of special elections we're going into here, and we can very clearly see that Republicans have failed. They are failing. At this point, they are utter failures at heeding the warning signs, understanding the moment they're in. All they want to do is go on Fox News and cite how poor Democrats are polling with favorability, approval ratings, right? All they want to do is cite New York Times articles about how Democrats have lost 4.5 million voters, this huge deficit. We've been talking about this forever. It doesn't matter how many voters you have an advantage with if you don't get them to vote. In fact, that is how Republicans had won elections for the last 20 years. George Bush did not go in to an R+4 electorate to win those two elections. His voters voted at higher rates. Ronald Reagan, he won significant crossover. That's totally different. But he still won almost every single state in a country that was heavily advantaged Democratic, meaning the electorate was not heavily Republican. That's not how he won. So it doesn't seem like these people are like showing themselves these cherry-picked data points. Voter registration is predictive of outcomes in elections, folks. Presidential elections, which we've talked about a lot. And I know I have to keep repeating myself, but I do, because not everybody in the world watches Inside the Numbers, although I wish they did. Because if they did, they would know this. Just like gubernatorial elections are not predictive of presidential outcomes. They're not. That's another comment. I mean, we just keep hearing this crap over and over and over and over. So let's look at the results from Virginia. Special election. Okay, why does this matter? Yes, it's a Democratic area. Yes, everyone knows that Walkinshaw was going to win. All right, Stuart Whitson got clobbered. 25% of the vote. It's a 50-point win. Why does that matter? Because this isn't a 50-point Democratic district. This is a 30 to 34% Democratic district. This represents, from the last election, the most recent election, this represents a 16-point shift to the left, to the Democratic candidate from the prior election, the most recent election. That's significant. Why? Well, because if you look at the special elections for the legislature, for instance, in Pennsylvania, which was among the first warning signs, heavily Trump area, heavily Republican area. And then the Democrat managed to eke out a win, a nail biter, 400 plus votes. That too was a shift right on par with this one. Most recent, Iowa. The Republican supermajority is now no longer in the state legislature. We saw very similar shifts in those elections as well. You could take it down south in between. We had elections in Florida. We had specials. Randy Fine is a congressman because of it. Tony Fabrizio put out a poll showing he was going to lose by 4, which was a fundraising ploy and a gag and a hedge too. This way, in case Republicans underperformed significantly and Randy Fine lost in like a 1-point loss or something like that for some crazy reason, then we would have been able to say, see, I told you. It suits Tony either way because he can raise more money and he can also cover his ass. So like it suits him either way to do that. Of course, that didn't happen. It was an over Trump plus 30 areas. So Randy Fine won, but he only won by, I believe it was 11 or 12 points, something like that. Ballpark of that. We can go look it up. But again, roughly a 16-point shift to the Democrat. Now, you're not going to see 16-point shifts all over the map in the midterm elections, folks. You're not going to see that. But if you do, and Sean Trendy wrote a great analysis about this years ago, the predictive value of special elections, okay? You cannot outright dismiss it, even though there's some conflicting evidence. You can't outright dismiss the outcomes of these special elections because it does tell you who is engaged and who is not. And Republicans have a bigger, more significant problem than they have in recent years because they're not used to this. They're not used to having the lower propensity coalition, and they don't understand what that means. Clearly. And they think that when it's a general election, all is going to iron itself out and all will be well. That's not going to happen. The only question at this point is how much ground Republicans are going to lose. Not whether they're going to lose ground, how much ground. We actually now see Democrats fielding and funding. It's probably best, more accurate way to put it. Serious candidates with serious money in states like Tennessee for U.S. Senate and states like Alabama for U.S. Senate. Interesting article in Politico, though. Nobody's really quite sure who wrote that, who fielded this poll. It was kind of interesting. I could show you guys that actually, but one of my followers, Stoic Patriot, I'm going to give you a little bit of a shout out here. He actually got this survey, and it's weird because nobody can really tell whose survey it is, but man, they pushed it. Over the years, Paul Feinbaum has received criticism for being a carpetbagger in the state of Alabama, as well as being critical of President Trump and historically supporting Democratic candidates. Knowing this, are you more likely or less likely to support him if he decides to run for U.S. Senate? I hate conducting polls like this. It's one of the biggest reasons why I don't like to poll for candidates anymore. They poll shit like that. And the point of the poll is not really to, it's not to gauge what people are really thinking, to give like valuable input on, the direction to take the campaign. It's to push and get a result that you can go and then use in the media and in donors and stuff like that. So if I do end up polling for any candidate, and there's one in particular I may poll for this cycle, we'll see. I'm very picky, very, very picky. You will not see me pushing people like that. Right? Because we don't conduct work like that. And if people want that, they can go do it somewhere else. Now, if there's a legitimate thing that you're issue testing, that's one thing. But that's not, there's different scopes. There's different natures of work. You're not doing that to poll. That's not like a real poll. You could do a focus group on something like that, or you could do an issue testing poll, and that's different. And or an attack message poll, and that's different. But it has to be understood that it is separate from actual legitimate survey, opinion gauging. That's not the same thing. So again, not a good result, a terrible result for Republicans. And I'm not trying to say this to say like I told you so and I was right. But I'm right, and I was right. And all of these people, again, you're doing the president and you're doing the Republican Party a grave disservice by acting like one of those clapping seal cheerleaders. Like, you're doing a grave disservice, because I will tell you this: how Donald Trump handled Israel boxing us into a corner, how Donald Trump handled Epstein, how he's generally being conceived at this moment as not being focused enough on the economy and the things they want him to be focused on, absolutely is costing them voters. It is. Again, the sole purpose of the Republican Party should have been to convince these voters that they are like Donald Trump. And instead, what we have seen is missteps, messaging screw-ups, and priorities all out of order from the White House that is making them actually think that Donald Trump is becoming more like the Republican Party. And I will tell you right now, if that is the case, there is zero chance these people will come out and vote for Republicans in the November midterms. It won't happen. All right. It was already historically very heavy lift for Republicans to do this, but it wasn't impossible. It absolutely could have been done. Truman did it. There are periods in history where we have seen these new coalitions mobilize the low propensity, particularly working class vote of all, whatever, color, denomination, whatever, race, creed, age. It's just, this isn't it. This is not how you do it. And I think it's also important to understand, like, there was a very long period. We're talking now almost 2 months, 3 months of the certain Republicans and their mouthpieces and their influencers and everybody else and their consultants browbeating elements of the coalition, thinking that they could just browbeat them into submission and disregarding their grievances. Sounds a lot like Democrats. That's how they handle voters. And with the expectation that it wouldn't harm the coalition significantly. That's only 5%. That's only 10%. That's only 2%. Well, the problem with that is when you add them up, it's 17%. So absolutely incorrect tact. And it has done damage. The question is whether that damage is irreparable. Or is it now incumbent on JD Vance to put together something else for whoever runs after Donald Trump's term is up? And that's, to me, somebody who polls Americans and their views and has been studying this coalition as it has evolved, as it has developed, as it has grown, which is the tragedy of all this. To me, it's sad to watch it happen because so many people who are very difficult to get to believe in this process, in an agenda, in a person, in a hope for a better future. It is tragic. It is straight up sad to listen to their disappointment, to watch Republicans not capitalize on that hope, on that belief. It's tragic. It is. I haven't seen something like this since the Tories blew the strongest coalition on the right in Britain since Margaret Thatcher. The sky was the limit. And how did they fail? What was the nail in their coffin? Well, clearly started with Brexit. You had Daniel Cameron blow that completely. He sided against Brexit. And yet most of his voting coalition voted to leave. He then tried to be responsive and say, you know what? I hear you. I was wrong. And because of that, I don't think I am the person to lead us through this period. So in the best interest of the country and in the best interest of my party and my governing coalition, I will now leave and I will, I'm passing the torch to Theresa May. Instead of acknowledging the concerns, the grievances, and the wishes of these new voters in the new Tory coalition, Theresa May tried to manage them. She tried to co-opt them, which is what we're seeing with MAGA a lot now on the right. They're doing the Republican establishment, which are frauds. They're posers, the poser party. That's what we're calling them over here now, the poser party. They're doing a much better job co-opting MAGA this time than they did the first time around. But Theresa May took an all of the above approach. The only approach she didn't take was respecting and obeying and following the wishes of the sovereign voter. And of course, I would argue there isn't a sovereign voter in Great Britain. They're not citizens like we are. They still remain subjects. But nevertheless, she didn't. And she was forced out. Then Boris Johnson came along. And they actually had an opportunity to take Nigel Farage's coalition to further build the Tory coalition up. He had gravitas, he had bona fides, he had it all. He had, he was a bona fide nationalist at one point. And he effed it up. And what we're seeing with Trump is, to me, there's a lot of parallels that can be drawn to Boris. The job of the Tories was to convince them, the voters, these new voters, in what was the former red wall for Labor, and it's the reverse. Labor's red. Their job was to convince these people in the former red wall, which were now voting blue, Tory, don't get confused, that the party will move more toward Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage, not the other way around. And Boris governed like a Daniel Cameron. Shit. Boris governed like a Tony Blair. He was awful on the lockdown. He refused to move forward with, none of them. Neither of those three refused to move forward with the wishes of the British voter and move forward with Brexit in the way that they wanted it carried out, in the way they voted for it to be carried out. And instead, those voters drew the conclusion. And many, you have to understand, Many of them were not staunchly partisan Tory voters, the same way that much of MAGA is not a loyal, staunch Republican vote. Although for some reason, both of groups of these people have deluded themselves into thinking that's true. It's not true. And those voters came to the conclusion that Boris was a sellout. You can't trust anybody anymore. And shit, I might as well not even vote, or hell, may even vote just for the Labor Party again. Because I have been voting Labor for years. My family had been voting Labor for years. These were ancestral Labor voting constituents, much the same way that in America, much of Trump's coalition is made up of ancestral Democratic voters who now don't affiliate with the Democratic Party anymore. Now they also, with that, inheriting a bigger coalition, both of these groups inherited too the former left wing's problem, which was, all right, they're all out there, but how do we get them to vote? And God, if they did, it was magnificent. They would win, and they could win easily. When we did our research on the Trump or bust voter and the new MAGA coalition, which we did more than a year before the president, this happened, way more. I have to go back and look, but I think it started in 22. We immediately identified, we talked to you guys about this, the problem that it really didn't matter who else Republicans ran. Even though these people were saying they agree with Republicans on like 70, 80% on the major policy issues, they didn't believe any of these other alternatives to Trump. They didn't believe Ron DeSantis really believed that. They didn't believe Nikki Haley would ever deliver on that. They didn't believe. They only believed one person. And that was Donald Trump. And that finding is clearly validated by the results of the 24 election, where people all over the map, I mean, you can take a look at a very important area like the Great Lakes states. Put that picture up again with him and Mike Rogers. This is a perfect example. I mean, it really doesn't get any better than that. You have Mike Rogers, who is more of like a rhino kind of figure, certainly more of a foreign policy interventionist than anything Trump argued America First would be, even though I would argue he's gone away from that now. It's not even close. I do want to pull up one of Trump's tweets to make because we have something going on. I don't want to blow it yet. Okay. But, we will have some, like, it's not much. It's not like huge, but we will have something to share with you, next week. And there's a couple of things that we're asking. One thing will be public, but I got to tell you, all yesterday, nothing but these voters bitching about Donald. And I don't even mean bitching. I don't mean to say bitching because bitching's wrong to say. Bitching would imply they don't have a valid criticism and that they're just bitching and moaning about something. That's not really true. All we heard about were these voters like complaining, like, when did Donald Trump become Lindsey Graham? Like, how long is Donald Trump going to let Israel do this shit? In case you don't know what I'm talking about, let me add this to the stage, pull this information. But I mean, Mike Rogers is a perfect example because we've gone over this. It's like, I don't want to do it again. How many episodes am I going to show the map to show you where Mike Rogers underperformed Donald Trump? And to show you right now, because of Trump's recent decisions, I do not believe Donald Trump would win the state of Michigan right now if he ever was up for re-election. All right. I think he lost 2 key constituencies that you need. Otherwise, you end up like Mike Rogers. It would be close. I think it would kind of, well, maybe not. Maybe more like 3. But anyway, all we heard about yesterday was this. This morning, the Trump administration was notified by the U.S. military that Israel was attacking a mosque, which, very unfortunately, was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar, or Qatar, whatever you want to say. This was a decision made by Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was not a decision by me. That's weak. It sounds weak. Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely, taking risks with us to broker peace. That's true. Does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who has profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. I immediately directed Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did. However, unfortunately, it was too late to stop the attack. Folks, people absolutely died. I view Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the U.S. and feel very badly about the location of the attack. I want all of the hostages and bodies of the dead released and this war to end now. I also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told me that he wants to make peace. Guys, everyone knows this is bullshit. I believe this unfortunate incident can serve as an opportunity for peace. I also spoke to Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. I assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil. Really? You can assure that? Because Benjamin Netanyahu is doing whatever he wants. He's not getting any repercussions from the United States. It's a satellite state acting as if they're the superpower, and the superpower is acting as if they are the satellite state. And to the average American voter, this is a very weak response. Once again, Donald Trump's letting Israel do whatever the hell he wants, whatever the hell they want, and it's not Israel. Netanyahu's got the support of maybe 3 in 10 people in the state of Israel. Likud and him win with a plurality of the vote. And he doesn't even have the support of the plurality that he had to get this governing coalition he has right now. Nobody believes Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants peace. This is just, guys, this is so tone deaf. And if you're one of these pro-Israel people on the right and you can't see this, you are a fool. I'm sorry. You're wrong. And after all these weeks now, there's been so many opportunities to demonstrate that you are wrong. So if you're just one of those people who can't ever admit that you were wrong and you stick your fingers in your ears and go la 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 la, la like a freaking child, then you deserve to lose elections. That's the nature of our system. This looks incredibly weak. This was one of the top things we heard about yesterday. It's why Mark Mitchell was on Twitter writing the tweets he was writing too, because that's all he heard about too. And I assume anybody else who does live interviews, you would have heard the same. This isn't one-off. They bombed a Christian church and killed a bunch of Christians. Nothing happened. Americans are not happy and do not support what is going on in Gaza right now and Israel's policies. They don't believe Israel's feeding a bunch of people and not starving them out. This is crazy. I don't care how loud Mark Levin yells on his show. He's wrong. Israel is getting more unpopular by the day, and it's really sad because it's Netanyahu. It's not the Israeli people. Again, it's not their fault. They can't beat Likud with a majority. Well, it kind of is. You set up the government you set up. It kind of is your fault, actually. I mean, honestly, it is. I'm just saying that, not all of the Israeli people even support this. And we're acting like Netanyahu is the nation of Israel. That's not true. It's simply not true. This relationship with Israel is going to do a lot of damage to the Young MAGA coalition. It already did. It already did. It's just true. Just a reality. And that's to say nothing of, are there any other subgroups that are rather important that maybe overlap with Young MAGA? I don't know. Non-whites, for instance? Yeah. There are. What's the overall problem here? Again, I think I just made it very clear. The overall problem is that Donald Trump has not succeeded, or I would say Republicans have not succeeded in convincing their newer voters in their coalition, which are overwhelmingly lower propensity voters, that they are America first. And that problem, that negative effect has been compounded, made worse by Donald Trump's actions. I mean, there's no way to nicely spin this. I'd be lying to you if I told you anything else. The results of these specials that you're seeing are the results of a couple of things. In politics, it's never just one thing. But you're going to have Mayor Mamdani, almost certainly, unless something crazy happens. You will have Mamdani because of what happened in Iran. All of the pollsters who were involved in that race know that. Cuomo was ahead. That literally changed over the weekend. And a bunch of MAGA voters you're seeing in these special elections are dejected. And they are, some is complacency. But when it comes to the voters, I would be more concerned about, if I was Republicans needing to get out these voters. These would be your voters. They're newer members of your coalition, but they're not going to vote because they're just so unenthusiastic. Daryl on Two-Way is a great example of that. Daryl from Pennsylvania, who gets interviewed on Two-Way. He's a perfect example of that. That is not a traditional Republican voter. He's a younger male. He's all about America first. He is not about foreign intervention or any of, the old hallmarks or the hallmarks of the old Bush Republican Party. Like that, not at all. In fact, that's repulsive to that kind of voter, and it will cost them that voter for a long time. They're not ready to go out and vote Democratic. If they were, even some, the ancestral Democratic areas, they're not ready to go back to voting Democratic, but they just vote. And they won't vote in such large numbers. You're going to see in specials somewhere in the neighborhood of, 15 to 20 point swings, and then in more general election matchups, you'll probably see somewhere in the neighborhood of more like 6 to 10 point swings. All right. So that's what we're looking at right now, folks. That's what we're looking at. And in fact, that is what we are looking at. If we go, do I have it up? Yep, I do. If we go to Real Clear Politics, and you can just dismiss every poll you want, but you could also be more intellectually honest with yourself and try to adjust for whatever house effect the pollster has specifically, and still come to the conclusion, though, that you're looking at a deficit for Republicans. So here is the Hill Emerson. It's Mamdani by 15 right now. New York Times with Sienna is Mamdani by 22. But I'm more interested in the Virginia gubernatorial election, somebody like a Spanberger who has been surviving. That's actually a great district, one that makes the point where Republicans have been underperforming, even though there has been an overperformance by Donald Trump or MAGA, right? The Economist YouGov poll is like identical to a 6-point swing from the last election. Signal, same kind of thing, right in that neighborhood. Morning Consult, right in that neighborhood. You have Qantas, who is a new pollster, but they did very well in 2024. By the way, Jason, I'll talk to you later, brother. By the way, he polled New Jersey. He's got Cheryl up by 10, right? So that's a 7-point swing. Okay. From the presidential election, it's less. But again, we're not talking about presidential elections. Let's go from gubernatorial election to gubernatorial election. That's about a 7-point swing. And then the rest is just garbage. Primaries for Democrats and Republicans at this point is a waste of people's money. Okay. It's just too early. Nobody cares enough to think about that right now. Actually, you might see somebody like a Vance doing so well right now as a reaction to people thinking, you know what? I don't know if this ship's ever going to get right. So I'll just start looking forward to the future. But things will change. It's way too far out to even consider that. That's a thought exercise and a whole lot of fun, but it's pointless. at this moment in time. But I would take seriously those New Jersey polls. I would take seriously. Spanberger, again, has been a really impressive candidate. She's a CIA spook. She came in with the Democratic National Security State Candidate Caucus, right? What the fuck is going on? What? Hold on. Laura, Charlie Kirk's been shot. Charlie Kirk has been shot. I need you to call Andrew and find out what's going on right now. Thank you so much for putting that in my feed. I had no idea. I'm going to look right now. We're going to look at Utah University, Laura. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. As you guys know, I personally know Charlie. He is a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine. So give me a second. I want to find out what's going on. Laura's making some phone calls. Yep. Yeah, Laura. Guys, hang on. Hang on. I just watched the video. That's not good. Time out, guys. Time out. I'm fucking mad. First and foremost. Time out, guys. It's off. There, his phone's off. You know what the thing is about this? We all know that one of these sick bastards could take a shot at us at any given point. I don't want to show this video, guys. You probably all have seen it. I want to see if I can see a little bit better what happened here. Fuck, he got hit in the fucking chest, Laura. That looks like a chest shot. That also sounds the caliber of that weapon. That's not a, I don't think that was a handgun close up. All right, so Director Kash Patel says we are closely monitoring reports of the tragic shooting involving Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. Our thoughts are with Charlie, his loved ones, and an affected. Agents will be on the scene quickly, and the FBI stands in full support of the ongoing response and investigation. Kash, you better fucking bury these people! Let me tell you what Charlie Kirk had just done. They got him. It's an old man, it looks like. A leftist boomer. It looks like an old left-wing boomer. Bald white hair and everything. Everybody wonders why I go on these rants? Let me tell you what Charlie Kirk was doing before he went to Utah University. One of my son's friends, who is going to be going off to college soon, is a huge fan of Charlie Kirk. Members of his family are huge fans of Charlie Kirk. And they just didn't ask for anything. Never. They know who, obviously. They know who I am. Do you know what Charlie was doing? Today, I think. Making a video and sending this kid a graduation box for nothing. For nothing. Telling him to dream big and go after his dreams. A personal video to this kid. Just taking his time to do it. I don't know if I should just get off the air because I'm fucking angry. And I'm just going to keep cursing live on the show over and over again. I hate to say it. I don't want to speculate. I hope I'm wrong about where the shot hit, but it looks somewhere along maybe his chest or neck area. This is a baby booming Democrat. I mean, I'll show you the guy. You guys want to see him? I mean, if you haven't seen him. This is what he looks like. That's him. That's who's been detained. So that's all I can say. I would like to make some phone calls to law enforcement right now is what I'd like to do, which I cannot do live on the show. But let me show you this, and then I have to call Charlie's fam, his peeps. Maybe it was a handgun. I don't know. I don't know. I can't tell. That's what he looks like. I don't know what this guy's role is. I don't think we know yet, but this is the one who's been detained. So what does that mean? I don't know. I'm not going to show my friend getting shot on video on the show. So that's not happening. All right. Look, guys, Peppers, thank you. And Sergeant Willie, all of you, thank you for letting me know that. I'd like to go and make some phone calls. Andrew's phone is on. I don't want to say this. I don't want to do this live on the show. I got to get off the show. Okay. Guys, I'd like to go and go see. I'd like to go check in and see what's going on. I'm sure you guys understand, right? Locals, maybe I'll try to pop on and give you guys an update if I can find out anything. But right now, just, give your prayers to him, of course, and his family, his very young family. This is what we've become. This is what we've become. I got to get off the camera. I got to get off the camera. All right, guys. Locals, I'll try to give you guys an update later if I can find something out. Peppers, thank you so much. I'll see you guys later. Don't forget to, whatever, like and share. You guys know. I'll talk to you later.